Hello guys, welcome. Today's lesson is about trade unions. What are trade unions? Trade unions are an association which represents the interests of a group of workers. I would like to introduce the topic a bit more. So I would like to give you an example. In 2016, 82% of workers in Iceland belong to a trade union, while only 10% of workers in the USA were trade union members. Now, what we will be doing in this video, we will be discussing why in some countries you would find more members joining a trade unions, and in other countries you would find that trade unions are not as popular. Also, we would be discussing what a trade union is and how does it affect the economy, the government, the firm itself, and even workers. All right? So trade unions, another name for it would be also labor unions. And as we said, it is an organization which aims to protect the interests of its workers. So their term and conditions of employment, including wage factors and non-wage factor. So a trade union is an organization which exists to protect the rights. All right? The trade union movement worldwide, what did it achieve? It helped in fighting and bringing an end to child labor in many countries, improving the workers' safety in the job itself, also increasing the wages of both union members and non-unionized workers. Because for instance, if there was a new rule that there would be a 10% increase for the workers, it's not fair to only give the members of the trade union this increase. And finally, it improved education and other benefits for many poor and working class families. So in return, when I am a member, how can I become a member or join a trade union? I would have to pay a membership fee. And it depends on how powerful the trade union is. What are the aims or the functions of a trade union? The first one is negotiation and improvement of wages and non-wage benefits. So for example, the non-wage benefits, it could be holiday entitlement, sick pay, and pensions. The second function of a trade union is defending the employees' rights and jobs. This is too broad. I need to make it a bit more specific. So in other words, I'm talking about working conditions, such as securing better hours of work and better health and safety policies in the company. Also, encouraging firms to increase workers' participation in business decision making. Because when I get to have a say in the firm in decision making, I would be more motivated to work, and hence I would increase the productivity. Also, supporting members who have been dismissed or who want to take an industrial action. Later on, I would explain in details what do I mean by industrial action. But industrial action, all you need to know for now is, one example of it would be when workers go on strike. Then I have developing the skills of union members. How do I develop the skills of workers? It is by providing training and education courses, providing social and recreational amenities for the members. So for example, it could be by giving gym membership. So the company would provide us with these things. And finally, improving employment legislation. What does that mean? Legislation, so I am making things legal. In other words, the trade union makes sure that every worker working in a firm has a legal contract that binds both the employer and the employee. It shows the salary or the wage, it shows the job description, the number of hours that the worker needs to work, how many days a week, and so on. Here we will be discussing the 4 different types of trade union. The first type is the general union. These trade unions are usually prepared to accept anyone, no matter what their occupation or skills or what industry they work at. So regardless of the place they work, the nature of their work, or their industrial qualifications. they tend to have a very large membership of unskilled workers. So Unite is a very large general union in the UK. Its members include drivers, warehouse workers, hotel employees, and even shop workers. Okay, another example would be the Australian Worker Union. The second type is industrial unions. Here we will be talking about workers from the same industry. So these trade unions represent all workers in their industry irrespective of their skills. So they might be having different skills as long as they are working in the same industry. And they don't care also about the type of work that is done. So for an example, an oil workers union would include workers involved in the exploration, extraction, storage, and refining of oil. So as you can see, we have different skills. The third type of union would be the crafts union. Crafts unions, we are talking about employees with the same skills or craft. So these are the oldest type of trade union and were formed originally to organize workers according to their particular skill. Okay? Finally, I have the non-manual unions, or I can call them as well professional associations or even white-collar unions. Here I am talking about prestigious or high-ranking jobs. So these labor unions recruit professional, administrative, and clerical staff, so workers that take a salary, and other non-manual workers. So remember, the trick here is they have prestigious jobs. So they are common in teaching, banking, and civil service and local government. So when I am talking about the teachers as well, I would be talking about professors because they are of a much higher rank than a regular teacher. Right now, we will be explaining a new term called collective bargaining. Collective bargaining, it means when we are doing negotiations. So negotiations take place between whom? The trade union members and the employers over. Why would they negotiate? Because they would want to improve wages and other non-wage benefits for the workers. So how collective bargaining is organized, it depends on the relationship between a union and the firm. So for example, a trade union present in one organization will represent workers with different occupational skills. What are they negotiating? They will be negotiating wages, working condition, working hours, holidays, health and safety, overtime pay, bonuses, job security, pensions, and even unemployment pay. Also, they would want to improve the education and the training skills for the worker, and they would be working according to the fixed national wage set by the government. Now, in order to argue with the employer or have a valid reason for the increase in wage, I would call that wage claims. So there are a number of arguments a trade union can put forward while asking for a wage rise. The first one would be productivity. When I am talking about productivity, it is one that is the workers deserve to be paid more because they are becoming more productive in their job. Then the second reason why I would be asking for a higher wage or a higher salary, it is because the industry's profits are becoming more. So another argument is that the industry whose profits have risen can afford to pay higher wages to its workers. And this argument may be linked to the first one, as the workers are likely to have contributed to the higher profits. When I am talking about pay rise, this is the third argument, and it is known as the best argument, which means a union may argue that the workers it represents should receive a pay rise to keep their pay in line with similar workers. So, for example, a union representing nurses may press for a wage rise if doctors are awarded a higher pay. This we took it in previous chapters when we were explaining workers, and we spoke about public opinion. Okay? And one very important argument would be about inflation. Remember, I am working right now with a $1,000 salary a month. This $1,000 was enough for me to buy my needs and do some of my wants. However, if inflation occurred, this $1,000 would not be able to purchase for me the same amount of goods and services that I used to buy before. Therefore, I have the right to ask for an increase in my wage or salary. And finally, new machinery or working practices have been introduced in the workplace. So for me as a laborer, I have more skills right now, and my job description has changed because I am capable of using the new technology that has been introduced. Therefore, I deserve to get an increase in my wage. This is a small study tip that I would like you to focus on. It is possible for the aims of employees and employers to be met at the same time. For example, a firm may agree to the demands of trade unions in exchange of productivity gains of their workforce. So in other words, you as a worker are more productive, then okay, fine with me as an employer, I would agree to give you a higher wage. This is a small summary about what are the benefits of joining a trade union. I would like you to pause the video and have a look at it, please. Union membership. So, as you remember at the beginning of this lesson, I told you what makes union membership high in some countries, and in other countries it is low. The first one is, why is it high? It is high in some countries such as Argentina, Bahrain, China, India, and Nigeria. And it is low in other countries such as USA. We said it was only 10% of the members. However, Iceland, we had a higher percentage of membership. So this decrease is because there is a decrease in the manufacturing industry and an increase in the services sector. Also, people would want to be joining a trade union. You would have low membership because the trade union in general has weak bargaining power. So there is no use for me to be joining that trade union because even if I join it, it is not giving me the rights. They don't have the proper negotiation skills with the employer. And they cannot take industrial action such as strike or work to rule that I will be explaining in a moment. I need you to understand one super important thing, that unions are much stronger in the public sector than the private sector. Why? Because workers that are working in the public sector, I need you to remember that these workers are capable of, for instance, literally shutting down the economy. So imagine all the workers working in the electric company and they're providing electricity for a certain country. They decide to go on strike and they don't want to work anymore. What happens is this country would lack electricity. Or as I explained in class when I was talking about Europe, for instance, the society there relies a lot on public transportation and relies a lot on the metro and trains. So imagine the drivers decide to go on strike. People will not be capable of going to their jobs. Students will not be capable to go to their schools or even universities. So it would harm the economy. So this is why they are of a much more powerful in bargaining with the employer. They negotiated. What if these negotiations fail and we do not reach an agreement? So no agreement. What happens? Trade union members make the industrial action. And what is the industrial action? It is to increase their bargaining strength. So industrial action, what it does is it disrupts production, so it stops production, and it increases the cost and reduces the revenue for employers. So in other words, I am looking at how can I increase the cost for the employer, the cost of production for the employer. What can I do? I can do 4 different things, but the strongest and the most powerful type of industrial action would be the strike. First of all, let me start with explaining what overtime ban is. Workers refuse to work more than their normal hours. So even if my employer tells me, how about you work 2 hours extra and we will pay you overtime? Why would the employer do that, even though they would have to pay? Because their aim is to increase production. Here, the workers decide, no, we don't want to work overtime. And the employer cannot force us to work overtime since this is outside my contract hours. The second one would be work to rule, which is I, as a worker, I am doing that on purpose to slow down production. And my reasoning would be I'm complying with every rule and regulation. So before I start with the machine, I would open the user's manual and I would read the step-by-step on how to use that particular machine. So I'm wasting time. The third one would be go slow. So workers carry out tasks deliberately slowly to reduce production. So mainly they will start wasting time and taking their time in their production in order to decrease production, because this is what the aim of an industrial action is. Finally, the most powerful type of industrial action would be to strike. When we say the workers are on strike, it means they refuse to work and may also protest outside their workplace to stop deliveries and prevent non-unionized workers from entering the firm itself. So, if negotiations fail, what workers will be doing is they will start these forms. But what if even after they did all the different forms of industrial action and they are still not having the increase in the wage or non-wage factors? What happens is arbitration. And arbitration may be necessary to settle industrial disputes or fights. This involves employers and unions agree to let an independent referee, usually it's someone from the government or a lawyer, to help them settle this industrial dispute. So here, what will happen is they will reach a compromise. So what is the union bargaining strength? How can I know if that specific trade union is powerful or if it is weak? So these factors affecting the strength of a trade union, we have different factors, 5 important factors. The first one would be high level of economic activity. The second one would be high number of workers, which means specifically I'm talking about the members of the trade union. The third one would be high level of skill. And the fourth one would be consistent demand for the product produced by these workers. So for example, when we spoke about the electricity or the trains. And finally, it is favorable government legislation. So as a summary, have a look at how we can have a strong bargaining power. So if the union represents most or all of the workers in the firm or the industry itself, or the union members are providing essential services such as healthcare and electricity, and the union is able to support the members financially during a strike action, and which is the high level of economic activity that we explained before. So for instance, if the workers decide to go on strike, it is the full right of the employer to deduct that sick day or a day off from the worker's salary. However, even if the employer deducts it, who backs me up? It is my trade union. They will pay me for this salary deduction. And we will be having a weak bargaining position if the opposite of what happened here occurs. What if negotiations fail? Why do industrial disputes occur? So if collective bargaining fails, trade union members may take an industrial action, such as work to rule, go slow, and striking, or even overtime ban, these four things that we just spoke about. So why would they do that? In attempt to increase their bargaining strength. They could either take something called an official action or an unofficial action. What is the difference between these two? Official action, it means they have the backing up of the union. Whereas non-official action, workers do not have the support of their union. Industrial action, it would affect businesses, union members, consumers, and the economy. I need you to keep that in mind. Let's see how it would affect or has major implications on businesses. It is because it stops production. And as we said before, it increases the cost of production and it decreases the revenue for the employer or for the entrepreneurs. How it affects union members, it may not be paid by the trade union the day that the workers decided to go on strike. It also might affect the consumer, because to me as a consumer, when workers are going on strike and they are deliberately not producing goods and services, I would, as a consumer, face a shortage of the goods and services. And when there is a shortage, shortage of goods and services, and because of the shortage, I would have higher prices of the goods. So it becomes more expensive to me as a consumer. And finally, it would affect the economy or the government by giving the economy or the government a bad reputation. And this will result in an increase in unemployment and decrease in incomes, because multinational companies will refuse to operate in that particular country. So, however, there are disadvantages to an employee of a trade union membership because of the costs money to be a member. I have to pay for the membership fee, and it may be required to take industrial action even if I don't agree. Also, trade unions seek to put forward their views to the media and influence government decisions, for example, on minimum wage legislation and employment laws. So we start talking on the news and arguing and protesting. We need 1, 2, 3, and so on. And the second one is improve communications between workers and management. Now we will be discussing the advantages and disadvantages of being a trade union member to the workers, firms, and even to the government or the economy. Let's start off with explaining the advantages of being a member of a trade union. To the workers themselves, the trade union fights for their jobs and working conditions. It also protects their wages and their benefits, so even their non-wage factors. It also prevents discrimination and the exploitation of the workers. Finally, as we said, it will provide training and educational courses to the worker himself in order to improve his skills. Now, the advantages to the firm, I have to think, how is it good to the firm? So I need to think about how the firm would be making more revenue out of having trade union members. The first thing is it maintains skill levels of its members, since they are always taking training and more educational courses. Less stress on firms, since they only have to negotiate with the trade union, head of union, executive, and not each and every worker. So they don't have thousands of workers going and complaining. No, they would have one representative from the union talking on behalf of other workers. And finally, since the workers have their skills and their proper education, this would lead to increase in productivity, since they increase the incentive of work for the workers. How is this good to the government? From the government's point of view, trade union can change economic policy and change employment laws in the country. And as we said, this would help talk about the minimum wage requirements. What is the legal minimum wage that the government could set? And also it reduces inequality. What do these mean? When I'm talking about employment laws and inequality, this you will study later on about government and macroeconomic policy. So the government's objective is to have full employment. It is it tries to achieve to cancel or to fight income inequality among workers. And finally, for the government, since the firms are doing excellent, this would lead to economic growth because firms in general, their productivity and their revenue has increased. And finally, it increases mobility of laborers. So more workers as well could be joining the country. So we would have migration of workers to our country because our country is doing all right because of the benefits of the trade union. Now, the disadvantages of the trade union to the worker himself, in order for me to join a trade union, I would have to pay a fee. So this I can consider it a disadvantage. One is unfair for the non-union members since they might be more productive and skilled than union members and they would be earning less. This is unfair. Also, when I am talking about a single union agreement or closed shop, what do I mean by closed shop? Closed shop, it is only employing workers from the same trade union. Employees will have to join a trade union and abide by its rule. To the firm, how is it bad? Since the firm would have to accept the wage claims, which is the increase in wages, this would be an extra cost on the firm. And also, it would have less control over who they can hire and who they can dismiss because they would always be negotiating with the trade union. They do not have the final say. And finally, increase in administrative and accounting costs since the firm has to collect the membership fee and hand it to the trade union. So they would have to hire more workers in order to collect the membership fee. To the government, how is it bad? It is bad because it might lead to increase in unemployment. And this is one of the macroeconomic objectives. So what the government tries to achieve is to get full employment in the country. So why would that happen? Because the country will have to pay welfare payments, which means I'm talking about unemployment benefits. And in order for the government to afford to do that, they might have to increase tax on the people that are already working. The second thing, how is it bad for the economy? Because they increase wages, so the more money is circulating in the economy, this would be leading to inflation. And inflation is one of the macroeconomic objectives that each government in the world tries to fight. They try to fight inflation and they try to fight unemployment, as what we discussed earlier. And finally, because industrial disputes in firms will lead to decrease in productivity, which would lead to decrease in output or decrease in economic growth. This is a quick summary of everything we just explained. So our topic is about trade unions. We discussed the functions of a trade union, and then we said how they will be doing collective bargaining. So the negotiation process between whom and what do they try to achieve. So they negotiate in order to get these things. And if industrial disputes occur, and I want to take an action, it would be by doing these 4 things. Now, how does it impact or affect workers, and what are the advantages and disadvantages to the workers? What are the advantages and disadvantages to the firm and to the economy or the government as a whole? Thank you guys, and I hope you had a wonderful time listening to this video. Have a good day.